Hello everyone, and welcome to a very interesting game from round 3 of the 2018 Sinquefield Cup. It's a game between Hikaru Nakamura and Alexander Grischuk. Before we check out the game, we do have a nice challenge. Best of luck to everyone. Who is the young gentleman in the photo here? There you have it. Now let's check out the game. Before we check out the game, we can also check out this very nice photo of Genie and Rex Sinquefield presenting Maxime Vachier-Lagroix with this very nice check, you know, just to get in the mood. Now let's see what happened here. Nakamura had the white pieces and he opened with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, so the Gioco Piano game. And here b4, the Evans Gambit, was not played by Nakamura in this position, unfortunately. Rather, he went for d3, the Gioco Pianissimo. Knight to f6, we have castles, castles, and c3. d5, pawn captures, knight captures, we have rook to e1 and the bishop to g4 now, pinning the knight. Knight bd2, we have knight to b6 and now bishop to b5. This was played plenty of times by many strong players before. Bishop to d6 and here h3. Bishop to h5, knight to e4 and now rook to e8. Also possible, I guess, is f5, and it's very interesting what you do here. For example, bishop to g5, attacking the queen, queen d7, and now you have to do something with the knight. Knight captures, queen captures, and it seems like a very nice position for black. The engine doesn't mind this position, but for some reason, rook to e8 is the standard move in this position. So okay, bishop to g5, attacking the queen, now f6, another one of those positions where it's actually okay to push f6. Bishop to e3 and now a6. White has to decide what to do with the bishop. Bishop captures on c6. B captures on c6 and now comes knight to g3 attacking the bishop. You don't want to grab black's dark square bishop and eliminate his bishop pair because you would simply improve his own pawn structure and create this massive pawn chain in the center. So after b captures on c6, knight to g3, attacking Grischuk's bishop on h5, we have bishop to f7, and here we have the exact same position Carlsen had against Levon Aronian in Your Next Move Leuven Blitz tournament in 2016. Here Carlsen proceeded with d4, and then knight to c4 was played, pawn capture, bishop captures, and so on and so on. But here, instead of d4, Nakamura goes for c4. And the engine actually prefers Nakamura's move slightly, so one could say that Nakamura has prepared for this position. So okay, bishop to b4 as c5 was a threat. We have rook to e2 and now bishop to f8. b3, now comes c5 and now queen to e1. So if you look at this position for a bit, you can see that Grischuk has this c5 pawn and this e5 pawn. So he really does have a firm grip on the d4 square. On the other hand, Nakamura has somewhat of a grip on the d5 square, but not as firm as Grischuk's grip on the d4 square. Because even if this knight somehow gets, for example, d2, b1, c3 and d5, Grischuk can always remove it with c6. Usually the plan is when you want to attack a weak backwards pawn, such as the d3 pawn, you first want to blockade it, create an attack against it, and then at some point win it. But here it's not all that important to blockade the pawn, as there is no way this pawn will ever be able to be pushed forward. So let's see how Grischuk approaches this position. a5. Okay, we have rook to d1, now comes a4. Knight to d2, we have queen to d7, and now knight to b1. Pawn captures, and bishop to g6 now. Again, creating an attack against the weak backwards pawn. f3, hoping to create an outpost for this knight to blockade the bishop on g6. Rook a to d8, again piling up against the d3 pawn. Queen to f2, and now comes queen to c6, defending the c5 pawn. We have rook to d2 and now comes knight to d7. At some point Grischuk will push f5 and he wants to bring this knight over to f6. We have knight to c3. We have h6 and now king to h1. King to h8, knight to b5 now. Bishop to h7 and now rook to a2. f5 by Grischuk. We have bishop to c1 and now comes knight to f6 as planned. Knight to c3. Queen to b7, attacking the b3 pawn, and rook to b2. And here g5. You might think, okay, why not f4? This attacks the knight, also creates a very nice double attack against the d3 pawn. Well, it's because this knight can now simply go to e4, blockade this bishop, and black doesn't really have that much advantage now. So after rook to b2, first g5 by Grischuk. Rook to b1. Now, as Grischuk does have a king on h8, Nakamura wants to bring this bishop over to b2 to put it on a very nice diagonal. Queen to c6. We have bishop to b2, and now king back to g8, getting it out of this diagonal. Knight to f1. And we have a knight to h5. Again, f4 would be a bit premature, as now this knight can block it with knight to e4. So okay, after knight f1, knight to h5, now having a very nice grip on the f4 square as well, and also keeping pressure on the g3 square. Knight to d5, and here comes queen to d6. The thing we discussed a bit earlier in the game, even if this knight ever comes to d5, Grischuk simply plays queen to d6 and will now kick away this knight with c6. So Grischuk didn't really need to stop Nakamura's plan of bringing this knight over to d5. Sometimes you just have to see what your opponent's plan is and allow him to execute it, because it's not a very good plan. So okay, knight to g3, we have c6 now, knight goes back, and now knight to f4. Again, piling up on the d3 pawn, and now you see that Grischuk simply kept improving the position slightly over time. He allowed this knight to come to d5, pushed it back, now he played knight to f4, and now there is no way to defend the d3 pawn. Queen to f1 was played, and now simply knight captures on d3, grabbing this pawn. That was kind of the point of this whole game. Knight c2 e2, we have queen to e6, now unpinning, bishop to c3, and now rook to d6, preparing to double up on the d file. Rook to d2, Nakamura also prepares to double up on the d file. Rook e to d8, and now rook b to d2, or to d1. Bishop to g6, taking away the h5 square from the knight. Knight to c1, and now knight captures. Rook captures on d6, bishop captures, and now rook captures on c1. Rook to b8, and now rook to a1. You can't really defend it with rook here, not because of this f4 move. You can again blockade here with the knight, but rather e4, now creating an attack against the knight here. And after you move the knight, here comes f4, after you captures, here comes bishop captures, and now you really have no other moves. Your rook is under attack. After you move it, you get queen captures on h3, and white simply falls apart here. So after rook to b8, we have rook to a1, and now rook captures on b3. Rook 8 check, rook blocks, rook back to a6, and now bishop to f8, so now the queen will be guarding the c6 pawn. Queen to e2, and now comes bishop to g7. Grischuk takes it slow, as of course, I haven't seen the game, but most likely as usual, as he is known to be a time trouble addict, he was most likely in time trouble, so perhaps he didn't have time to calculate e4, as it again works. F captures on e4, f4 attacking the knight, knight goes back, and now rook to b3 will give black the decisive advantage. But okay, queen e2, bishop to g7 was played, rook to a7, and now rook to e8. H4, pawn captures on h4, knight to f1, and now f4. Knight to d2, we have rook to e7, rook captures, queen captures, and the knight to e4. Bishop to f7, pressuring the c4 pawn, we have king to h2, and now comes h3. A very nice move by Grischuk, because now king captures on h3 will be met with queen to e6 check. And you move the king, and now you grab the c4 pawn. Queen captures, bishop captures, and with 3 extra pawns and the bishop pair, this will be decisive advantage for black. So after h3, g captures on h3 was played, but now simply queen to e6 with an attack against the c4 pawn. Queen to g2, and now king to h7. Not going for queen captures on c4 and allowing ideas such as bishop captures on e5. It seems that black is not able to prevent checkmate here, but of course that would not be the case. Black has this queen to a2 move that pins the queen, and now after knight f6 check, king moves, captures, king g2. Still, of course, black is up 2 pawns, but it's a double c pawn, so perhaps white could still produce some tricks. So okay, queen g2, king to h7, queen to c2, now pinning, creating some ideas like knight f6 check and queen h7 checkmate. So after king to h8, we have queen to b2 now. King moves back, we have queen back to c2. Grischuk, Nakamura would very much enjoy a draw by repetition here. Queen to g6 now. Queen to e2, and now bishop to e6, preparing bishop to f5. Queen to f1, bishop to f5, and now queen to e2. Queen to h5 here. If you go for the immediate bishop captures, queen captures, and f captures, yes, you would most likely still be able to win this, but you know, you don't want to allow any accidental fortresses, as there are a lot of light squares here. All of your pawns are on dark squares. It's not all that clear how your king would be able to enter the game. So after queen e2, queen to h5, knight to f2, and now comes queen to h4. A very nice move, threatening queen to g3, and there is really nothing to do here anymore. If you try something like queen to f1 to guard the dh3 pawn, then you get queen g3 check, king moves, captures, king moves, and now you lose the bishop on c3, and it's all over. So after queen to h4, you get knight to e4, guarding the g3 square, but now it's queen captures on h3, king g1, and queen to h5. We have bishop to e1, bishop captures on e4, queen captures on e4, and now queen to g6 with a check, blocking the check and creating a check of his own, and now the queens are getting traded off. King h2, queen captures, f captures, and king to g6 now. So here Grischuk is up 3 pawns, and it's and the same bishop color endgame, so it is very much winning. King to h3, king to h5, we have bishop to h4, and now f3. Excellent move by Grischuk, because now king to g3 will be met with simply f2, threatening the queen. You would have to capture, you would lose a piece, and of course the game. So after this f3 move, bishop to f2 was played, and now bishop to f6. Bishop to e1, now bishop to g5, and bishop back to f2. White doesn't really have all that much to do here. Again, if you try king g3, bishop checks, you lose the bishop. So after bishop g5, bishop to f2, we have bishop back to e7, and now bishop to e1. Here Grischuk took a couple of moves to decide how to break through. Bishop to d8, bishop to g3, again attacking the e5 pawn, and here Grischuk found it. King to g5, he allowed Nakamura to capture the e5 pawn. Bishop captures, and now bishop to f6, offering a trade. Of course, white cannot allow this trade, as the pawn endgame is winning. So king to d6. We have f2, again a very nice move. King g2, and now bishop to d4, defending the f2 pawn, and also the c5 pawn. King to f1, now comes king g4, king e2, now comes h5, as now Grischuk is ready to push his other passed pawn. King f1, h4, bishop to h2, h3. King e2, here Grischuk played bishop to e3, and it was in this position on move 89 that Hikaru Nakamura decided to resign the game. Why did he resign? If you are perhaps new to chess, you're welcome to pause the video and figure out what is the winning plan here. So, you know, I will give it a second if you want to, you know, just to do it. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, you are an excellent endgame player. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, first of all, you have to play something. If you play something like king f1, simply repeat, then bishop to f4 is coming, attacking your bishop here. You don't have the option of moving it, as the g1 square is guarded. After bishop captures, king captures, you will capture here, and after king captures, while you're busy stopping the passed h-pawn, this king will capture the c-pawn, and then you will push your own c-pawn to victory. And if instead you push e5, for example, then king f5, preventing the pawn from being pushed forward. King f1, you can simply block the pawn here, and now after king repeats, now you play this. You attack the pawn. After bishop g3, you will simply capture here. You don't have the option of capturing with the bishop, because then h2 is coming. You can stop the pawn on a light square, so you'd have to capture with the king, and again we have the same idea. Captures, and now while the king is busy stopping the passed h-pawn, you will grab this pawn, and after this you will simply create a wall here, and you will push your pawn to victory. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. After bishop e3, move 89, Nakamura resigned, and a very nice game for Grischuk, who after round 3 joined the leaders of the tournament. Here we even have the standings, so let's check it out. There you have it. In first place, Levon Aronian, Magnus Carlsen, Shahriar Mamedyarov, and Alexander Grischuk, all of them with 2 points, as the 3 of them drew their games in round 3, and Grischuk won his game. Then we have with 1.5 point Maxim Vashiela, Graf, Fabiana Caruana, and Vishwanathan Anand, with 1 point Hikaru Nakamura and Wesley So. And in last place, who after 2 losses came strong with a draw, Sergei Karyakin. So yeah, once again, I do hope you enjoyed it and that you're enjoying the coverage of the Sinquefield Cup so far. I would like to thank Jesus Villar Ruiz for the contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, hopefully with another interesting video. And yes, for all of you wondering, I am still preparing the Fischer-Larsen series, but I am really busy these last few days, so should be very soon. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.